What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to show you how to get up and running with Svelte. We're going to build this to-do application here. We're importing this navigation component. We have some logic that will show if there's to-dos or not. If there's not, we'll say add to-dos. And then once there are to-dos, those will pop up. Notice the transition there. So it kind of fades in, and those will fade out as well. So we'll be deleting to-dos. I'll show you how to iterate over data. We'll import components and send data into those components.
How'd you do this? I'll show you.
So what is Svelte? Svelte is a more recent and modern framework for building user interfaces, similar to Vue and React. But unlike React and Vue, who do the bulk of their work in the browser, Svelte shifts that work into a compile step that happens when you build your app. And so there's no virtual DOM. Your app starts fast and stays fast. And that also means there's no virtual DOM diffing, so it kind of cuts out the middleman. And they show you how to start a new project right here. So we'll copy this over. We'll leave this part out because that will be the name of your project. Come over to your command line, and then we'll call our project Svelte to do app. And if you're wondering what dgit is, it's similar to git clone, but instead of getting the entire history of commits, it only takes the latest commit, so it's faster. And then this would be the name of the GitHub username or account, and then this is the name of the repo. So we're cloning that, and then this is the name of our project. So that cloned that. And we'll change directory into our project and install the dependencies. Then I'll open that in my VS Code. And then to run it, it's npm run dev. And that will be on localhost 5000, which I already have here, but now I'll refresh it because we're on a new project. So you have a very simple starter app to start working with. Now if we look in the code, we have a public folder which has a global CSS file, and then your basic index HTML. And then the bulk of our code will be in this source folder. We have an app component, which is our main component, but I also want to show you this main.js. This is our entry point where we target the document.body, and then we have these global props here which we can use anywhere in our application, which I'm going to comment out for now because we won't be using that. And now in our main app component, that's where it's bringing in that name property that we just saw in the main.js and then using it here. But yeah, this is the setup of an app component, and I think it's really cool. You have your script tags up here, you have your HTML, and then your style and your tag and your CSS all right in the same component. So this CSS will be applied to this component, and this script tag will be applied to this component. I think it's very cool. So we'll start off with kind of an empty project here. We'll get rid of that. Get rid of this content. And get rid of this H1. I'll keep these kind of general basic styles in there. So if we save that, we have blank project here. I'm going to go ahead and add a background color. I'll just do that in the global CSS. I'm also going to get rid of the padding here. Change that to 0. And then the background, I'm going to do a linear gradient. We'll do a 2 top right. Save that. Pretty much the most gorgeous background that's ever existed. So let's see, if we go to our app component, let's say we want to create a navigation bar and import it into this component and display it there. So we'll add a file which we'll call navbar.svelte. Note the Svelte file extension. And we won't need our script tags in here because it's just going to be a static navigation bar. So we can just start off with our HTML. Do an anchor tag, ID logo. We'll make that to the home page. We'll say tech check. Make sure you like and subscribe. Do an anchor tag that will link to the home page. We'll say home. And then I'll duplicate that with Option Shift down. And we'll say not home. And we'll link to not home. And then we can just write our style tags right in this component. So we'll save that. And then in our app component, we can just import navbar from navbar.svelte file. And then we can bring it in just like we do in React. This kind of component here. If you take a look at that. Beautiful. Now let's put a little form here with an input and submit button for our to-dos. So it'll be in our main tag. I'll put a form tag. Input type equals text. We'll say that's required. Button type equals submit. We'll say submit. So we want to track what the user's typing here in a variable and bind it to this input. So up in our script, we'll say let to do equals an empty string initially. And then to bind that to this input here, we'll do bind colon and then the value. And we'll toss in our to do variable. And so now whatever they type will bind to this variable. And then when they submit the to do, on the submit button here, we're going to do an on colon, and you have all these events. You could look through tons of them. And we'll say on click, because we want the click event. And on that click event, we want a function that we'll create called submit to do. And then up in our script, we'll have a function of submit to dos. And so we'll create another variable called to dos where we keep track of our to dos, which will be an empty array initially. And when they submit a to do, typically in React, you would have to kind of send in the event and then do event.prevent default right in this function. But a cool thing you can do in Svelte is right on the onClick handler for the submit button, you can enter in a pipe character and then just type prevent default. A little quicker and cleaner, pretty cool. So now to submit the to-do, we'll say to-dos equal, and then we'll bring in with the spread operator any previous to-dos, and we'll add the to-do, which is whatever they had typed. And after they submit it, we'll change that to-do input back into an empty string. And lastly, we'll display those to-dos underneath the form. So we'll say if there's no to-dos, we'll add a paragraph tag of add to-dos. And then if there are to-dos, we'll iterate over them and display the to-dos. And for now, I'll just put the to-dos in a paragraph tag, but then we'll later change it to an actual to-do component and then send in that data into that component. So to do an if statement, do the curly braces and a hash sign and if to-dos dot length is equal to 0. So if that's equal to 0, we'll just display this paragraph tag. And you can do curly braces, colon else. So if there are to-dos, and this is how we'll iterate over data, do curly braces with the hash sign and do an each. And then the array we want to iterate over is to-dos. And over each to-do, or each item in that array, you do a keyword there, which we'll just call to-do. And so for each to-do, we'll display a paragraph tag, and then we'll display the to-do. And we'll close the each here, and we'll close the if with the slash there. So save that. Go over to our app here. We see the add to-dos because there are no to-dos. Say learn Svelte, and there it is. Good deal. So now let's make these their own component and send in that to-do into the component, and that's where we'll make the kind of glassy background I had for each one of them with the little delete icon there. So back in our code, to create another component, we'll just add another file here, which we'll call todo.svelte. And we will need the script tag here because we'll be bringing in that data into this component. And as far as the HTML for this component, we'll put it in a div. And we'll put in that paragraph tag. And we'll display the to-do that we're sending into this component. And then I'll display the delete icon. I'm using font awesome. So the class of FA, font awesome, FA-trash, and we'll hook up that functionality here in a minute. And the easiest way to use font awesome is to just get the CDN from their website. It'll give you a script tag that you can just toss right into the index.html and the head tag here. Just throw the script in there and it'll work. And I'll style this in a second, but I want to show you how to pull in that data from the app component. So we have this to-do component here. So we'll import that into our app component. from todo.svelte. And then where we have the paragraph here where we're showing the to-dos, we'll show the to-do component. And then to send in the to-do, very similar to React, we'll send in the to-do. And then to access that inside the to-do component, you have to do that where it seems a little backwards. It's the export let to-do. And now that to-do is displayed here. So now throw in a style tag and style this component. So if we save that and go back to our app here, when you see these to-dos, they'll come from the to-do component. See, we got the glass background there, the icon. Although these icons won't delete the to-dos yet because we haven't coded that up. And I'll show you how to do that now. And it's pretty cool with Svelte. You can create an event inside a component and then listen for that event in another component. So in our to-do component, we can fire off an event that is deleting a to-do. And then it's similar to Redux, where you dispatch an event and you can also send a payload, send some data with it. So for us, that would be a delete event, and then the data we'd send with it is which to-do we're deleting. So let me show you. So to create an event, we can come up to our script tag here, and we can import from Svelte a create event dispatcher. And then we'll make a const of dispatch. And we'll say create event dispatcher. And call that function. And we'll send a function that will delete the to-do into this icon here. And we'll say delete to-do. But then inside that function is where we'll dispatch our custom action. So I'll say delete handler. And we'll use that dispatch. And then the name of our custom event, which we'll say delete. And then in our icon here, we'll do on click, just like before. And then we'll say delete handler. Now we're going to also have to send in the index of the to-do so we know which to-do we want to delete. So we'll get that as an argument. And where we get that is we'll send that into the component as well from our app component. And so we're iterating over the to-dos for each to-do in that array. And we can also get access to the index as well. And then we'll send that in like so. And then back in our to-do, we'll do that export let index. And now that index variable here is what we're using here, that we're sending into the delete handler. So we'll bring that in here. And now this custom event that we're dispatching here, you can send in a payload where you just do a comma and then whatever data you want to send with it, which for us will be that index. So back in our app component, for each to-do, we can do an on, and then instead of like a on click event, we can do our own custom event, which it just popped right up there. But so you can do on delete, which was the name of our custom event here. And so when that happens, we'll fire off a function. We'll say delete to do, and then we'll write that function up here. And we'll get that event passed in. And this is where we'll delete our to-dos. So we'll say to-dos equals to-dos.filter. We'll use the filter method, which will iterate over each of those to-dos. So it'll be a to-do on every iteration. And we'll also get the index passed in as well, because we want to compare the index that we're deleting to the index in the array of to-dos. And so for every iteration, it will compare this expression to all of the to-dos. And if it's true, it'll keep it. And if it's false, it'll filter it out of the array of to-dos. So we'll say the index, which is the index that it's iterating over. So this will be all the indexes. If that is not equal to the index that we're deleting, and the way we get that in here is this event that we're passing in, and that payload I was talking about, the data that we're sending with it, you access that with event.detail. So event.detail is this. That's the data that we're sending with the event. So save that. Go back to our app here. If we click these, they delete. And then another thing I want to show you, which is one of my favorite things about Svelte, is how easy it is to add those transitions when we delete these and when we enter them and they pop up in our to-do component. Up in the script tag, we can literally just import fade from Svelte transition. And then right in this div, transition fade. Save that, and it's literally as simple as that. It fades in there. So you delete them, they'll also fade away. Very cool. So hopefully this is enough to get you up and running. Their documentation is some of the best I've ever seen. And they have all kinds of things in here. So if you do await blocks, it'll show you what to do here. It'll show you what to add, and you can either add it yourself or just click show me, and then it shows you the result down here. Very cool. And yeah, like I said, they have just all kinds of stuff that they'll show you. Here's the transitions here. They have a bunch of different kinds, way to customize it and everything. Great documentation. And last thing I want to show you too was if you inspect this, it's all HTML here, just no injected weird stuff in here. It's the source code is just straight HTML, which is very nice. So yeah, I think Svelte is an awesome framework. I hope you learned something here and have enough to get up and running and make your own projects. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching.
Check it.